ready.
Gerry, could you tell us your name and where you were born, raised?
Yeah, my name's Gerry Morris. Edmund Gerald Morris is the full name. Nobody knows. I was born in Gilmer. That's in East Texas, where my dad's family was from. Lived there for a century or more.
Okay, and did you go to school there?
We moved to Tyler, or the Tyler area, when I was a baby, and I went to school in a little town called Winona. There's 35 people in my graduating class.
Your mother was a nurse?
Mother was a nurse. That's why we moved there. She worked at a hospital a quarter of a mile from where I grew up.
And where did you go to college after you graduated high school?
I graduated from Stephen F. Austin in Nacogdoches and went to UT Law School.
And when did you graduate?
77.
And that's from law school?
From law school, yeah.
What did you do after law school?
I went right out into practice. I clerked for a guy who was a dear friend in Austin, and I applied at some DA's offices, interviewed in Dallas and some other places, and nobody told me no. They just didn't tell me yes quick enough. So I just decided to hang out a shingle.
And who did you work for?
I worked for a guy named Gerry Howarth, who's still practicing. Real smart guy, and taught me a lot.
And so when would you have hung out your shingle?
That would have been right after I was licensed. I probably formally started January 1st of 78. I was licensed in November of 77.
So how do you think you would have done if you'd gotten a DA's job?
Oh, people would probably thought I was chicken shit, to use a word, legal word. You know, I don't know that I had the kind of judgment at age 25 that I needed for a position like that, like some of the prosecutors I see now.
So did you always know you was going to go into criminal defense?
Yeah, I never wanted to do any other kind of law.
And why?
I don't know, it just seemed that the time that I grew up, growing up in East Texas, I saw the transition, Civil Rights Act of 64, the Vietnam War era in the late 60s, the marches and the upheaval with civil rights, and it just really burned into my consciousness the idea that people do wrongs to other people, and that the people usually that are being wronged are less powerful, have less of a voice, and somebody needs to stick up for them.
Have you ever had any regrets about being a criminal defense lawyer?
No. In fact, at times I've pondered, well, if I wasn't doing this, what would I do? And I can't come up with a single thing.
When did you get involved in Texas criminal defense lawyers?
Probably became a member in the early 80s, maybe 81 or 82. And then when I really got involved, I remember how I signed up. Jim Bobo and Knox Jones showed up at my office one day, just unannounced, and talked me into joining. They used to do that to drum up membership. But when I really got involved is Bob Jones, former president, was elected judge, and his partner took me in as partner, and I took over Bob's caseload. And Bob got me involved more at TCLA, got me on the board.
So what's it mean to you? How's it helped your career?
Well, it's helped several fronts. So just the sort of the superficial stuff is referrals in and out. If somebody calls me and says, my son's in jail in Lubbock, I call Bill Wishcamper. If somebody calls me and says my son's in jail in El Paso, I know who to call. I haven't walked in a courtroom anywhere in the state in years where I didn't know somebody. The network is great, and I also get cases, of course, from people from other parts of the state. But I think what's meant to me personally, and also career-wise, is what we do drag you down. You get beat down and discouraged, and I go to a TCLA meeting. It's like a tent revival. This, where we are today in San Antonio, is the biggest tent revival we have every year. I see all my friends. I see the people that hold the same values that I hold, and I hear them talk about their cases, and we pump each other up, and it's just wonderful. And I've made the best friends I've had in my life through TCLA.
What about some of the other things that TCLA has done and you've helped them do through legislature, changing the laws, making sure bad laws don't get passed?
Well, if it wasn't for TCLA, criminal defense lawyers wouldn't have a voice in the legislature. There's nobody else really carrying their message there. And the prosecutors are very well organized and have a big lobbying presence. Over the years, our presence has gotten more sophisticated. Back when I was legislative chairman, we did have a paid lobbyist. It may have been the first or the second session that we did, but it was a part-time person. Now we have a full-time lobbyist and a paid staff person in the legislature. And we've been able to accomplish a lot of good things in the legislature.
But you were active in the lobbying back there for a number of years, right?
Right. I was on the committee one year. I was very active, and I was chair of the committee the following session, and of course was active as a chair. And then through the years, I've been active primarily because I'm in Austin, but also because I was interested in it. The other thing TCLA does that I think is real important is the strike force. The strike force helps lawyers out to get themselves in a crack with a judge usually, or grand jury or somebody, because they were doing their job. And that's a lonely feeling. Some of the best friends I've made have been a few lawyers I've represented on contempt issues. I walk into their town now, and one of them is a district judge now. He hasn't forgotten it, and the other one now, another one is a prosecutor, elected prosecutor. He hasn't forgotten what we helped him with. It's a very important function that we perform.
And you were president of Texas Criminal Defense Lawyers what year?
1997.
And that would have been a legislative year, right?
It was.
And that's the tough year to be president.
Yeah,
Any regrets spending the time? I mean, it takes a lot of time, right?
No, it takes a lot of time. No, I don't have any regrets at all. If I hadn't been president, I would still be trying to be president. It's a great honor.
And even since you were president, you've continued to be active. You're on several committees, right?
Yeah.
One of them, the office, something to do with
Office management. I was chair of CDLP for a couple of years after I was president. You and I have been on the Hall of Fame committee for quite a while. Been on the nominating committee, just various committees. Just about anything I'm asked to do, I'm glad to do it.
And you were in charge of Rusty Duncan 2 years ago, right?
2 years ago, right.
And that was a record.
At the time, it was a record. I think the next year they beat us, but that was a record.
Are you married, Gerry?
I am.
When did you get married?
Got married in '97, the same year I was president.
And who did you marry?
Married Suzanne Spencer, a criminal defense lawyer and a member of TCLA.
Now y'all work together now, right?
We do. She's in my office.
Did you tell us about your honeymoon?
Okay. Like I said, some of the greatest friends I've ever made, I met through TCLA. You and Stuart Kiner are two that I want to mention because both of you went on our honeymoon. You with your wife and Stuart with his wife Jeanette. And I was well in my 40s, and Suzanne had just turned 40 when we got married. And honeymoons are a little different at that age than they are when you're a teenager or your early 20s. And we said, what do we really want to do? How do we want to spend 2 weeks? What would be our favorite thing to do? And we said, well, our favorite thing to do would be to invite our two good sets of good friends. Travel around. We went to New Mexico. We camped out. We stayed at your place in New Mexico. We drove around and just generally had a good time.
I always get it mixed up, but that wasn't the honeymoon when we went to the national park with Stu.
No, that was after we were married. We kind of revisited the trip and the couples again. Actually, just Suzanne and me, and then you and Stu went to Guadalupe National Forest in New Mexico and camped out. And one of the most memorable things I've ever witnessed, we were up on a plateau and we were having a good time and yucking it up, and we looked off the edge of the plateau and the clouds had closed in under us. We were actually up above the clouds, and it was kind of a mystical experience to be there with good friends and just one of those moments that you'll never recreate.
Drinking wine and listening to Stu.
Right. And Stu was a talker.
Have you ever tried a case with Stu?
Yeah, I tried several with Stu. Stuart Kinder was a great friend and maybe the best trial lawyer I've ever been around. And that's saying something. That's another thing about TCDLA is you meet so many good lawyers and you can learn so much from them. But I probably learned more from Stu than anybody else. And it was just a real treat to get to try cases with him. And I've tried probably half a dozen with him.
Anyone stands out?
Oh, yeah, I think the one that's most memorable is a murder case that we tried in Belton, Bell County. It was the death of an infant. Before that was a capital crime. It was the punishment range was 5 to life. And it was a soldier who had come back from the first Gulf War and had never seen his child and came back, was alone with the child on a Sunday morning and called the ambulance. The child was dead, and the autopsy revealed a head injury, and he was indicted for murder. And we tried the case. I think that may have been the time that I witnessed the most out of Stuart. His preparation, his thought in a case, and of course me being part of it, it drove me to be better, and it gave me ideas and taught me things, and it was just a wonderful experience. And the outcome was that our client was found guilty, but he was given 7 years. And I never will forget when the jury read the verdict, the punishment verdict, Stuart, in all seriousness, leaned over to me and said, "Did they say 7 or 70?" And I said, "I think 7, but I need to read that verdict." And of course the state wanted life, and it was, now it would be a capital case.
Did Stuart ever have any antics that sometimes he's portrayed in the courtroom?
Well, in that case, the way we had divided the case up is I was going to try the guilt innocence first, part of the case. And we knew it was going to be a guilty verdict. We had a defense, but the defense, frankly, was to build some equity into the case and sympathy for our client. But it really needed to be pushed hard. And we were trying to figure out how to deal with just the emotional shift of pushing real hard for not guilty at the guilt phase, client being found guilty, and then sort of retracking and saying, okay, well, he is guilty, but please be lenient. And so we decided that I was going to do the guilt innocence phase and Stuart was going to do the punishment phase. So that meant, of course, Stuart sat through the trial, didn't say much. It's hard for Stuart to sit and not say much. So we started out trying the case, and Stuart would send me notes, and invariably the note, I would have my list of questions or issues I was going through, and invariably the note would be something was on my list, but Stuart just thought I would ask it right then, so I'd slide the note back to him. And we got to the point where he kept doing that, and we got to a break, and I said, "Stuart, you got to leave me alone. I know what I'm doing. We've worked on this. You you're distracting me sliding those notes over. He kind of pouted and said, I didn't mean to distract you. And I was trying to help. I said, no, you're trying to help, but, give me some space here. So we go back in, and the next witness is the key witness in the case. And it's, as I recall, it was one of the officers who supposedly heard my client say something incriminating. And, there's all sorts of reasons why we thought that hadn't happened. So I was really bearing down, cross-examining that officer, and it was a dramatic moment in the courtroom. And about that time, to my left where Stewart was sitting, Stewart passed gas audibly. And it was just, everybody in the courtroom heard it. And of course I couldn't break the tension, so I just ignored it, and I kept on. And so after that witness, we broke for lunch. I said, Stewart, what in the heck were you doing? Why did you do that? He said, well, it occurred to me that you were doing pretty good with that cross-examination, but it also occurred to me that under normal circumstances, a lot of lawyers can pull off a cross-examination like that. I just wanted to see how you'd handle some adversity.
While we're at it, let's talk about the tragic end to Stu. I know you were supporting him up until the last. Tell us about those last few months before he died.
Stewart was what I guess is called a slow cycling manic depressive and bipolar disorder. And he became manic and then crashed, became very depressed, and then became manic again. And he just couldn't concentrate anymore. He quit practicing law, just sort of traveled around, and he would get into arguments with people, and I was really afraid for his safety because he was just crazy, just manic. And he would come to town every now and then, and I would arrange for someplace for him to stay. And we'd go out, and I'd talk to him, and he would be, 50% crazy, incoherent, and 50% the old Stewart. And it was just tragic because the old Stewart would appear and disappear. And I tried, of course, every way I could to fix that problem, which was unfixable. And it was real frustrating to have a great friend like that in that situation. And you take someone, he was a very strong personality, very headstrong, and to suggest to him that he couldn't handle himself, that he was out of control, was just an insult. So you had to be very delicate in approaching that, and there was no way to be that delicate. When he would really start going off, if you tried to control him, then that would cause him to run away. And finally, he actually died of a massive infection. Just had been taking care of himself. But I remember the last time I saw him, he and I had dinner at a barbecue place in Austin. He was flirting with a waitress, and Stewart was always good at that, but Stewart, as somebody described it once with his illness, it was like you'd taken Stewart and turned the volume way up. And so he was being, kind of inappropriate, a little bit loud, and then all of a sudden he snapped into the old Stewart, and we started talking about things we'd done and cases we'd tried, and talked about the case I just talked about, the one in Belton. We talked about one we tried a couple years before that evening, and his memory was absolutely superb. And about halfway through the conversation, he realized how clear he was being, and he just kind of was startled by it. And I said, Stewart, you're back. And he said, yeah, for right now I am. And then, an hour later he was gone again.
We've lost another good friend in the last year, Doug Tanker. Tell us about your relationship with him.
Well, Doug and I had known each other for several years, but we really got to know each other when we tried the Branch Davidian case together. And Branch Davidian case was, the greatest opportunity in my career. Really through nothing I did. It was fortuitous that because I was involved with TCLA and I knew so many of the lawyers that were involved with that group representing the Branch Davidians during that ongoing tragedy, that when finally things sorted out that there were people charged, somebody called me and recruited me to represent one of them. And of course I did it for free, and just about everybody else there did it for free. And Doug was one of them. And we were all, a lot of us were kind of overwhelmed and taken by how important we were being in a case like that. Of course, the national scrutiny was intense, and we were sort of distracted by that. I guess we were trying to worry about how we were looking as much as how we were doing things. Doug came to work. There was no question. Just a few meetings into the preparation for that case, who the best lawyer in the room was, and he became the leader by example, not because he pronounced himself to be so. And I there him work, and in preparation, he was just relentless. He went through everything. There were floors and floors of evidence in an office building in Waco that we went through, and he just absorbed it like a sponge. Then we got to the trial, and I've never seen anybody do what he did as well as he did it. He wasn't a showman. He wasn't someone with a great deal of glamour about him. He was kind of plain looking, but just endearing as he could be, and so prepared. I watched him cross-examine government witnesses about an issue, and we had thousands of pictures, and he would cross-examine them on an issue, anticipate what story they were going to tell to try to get themselves out of a jam, and have the picture at the podium that would cut them off. And we just watched that time and time again. You did this. No, sir. What happened was that. Well, look at this picture. That doesn't square with what you said, does it? And halfway into the trial, they were afraid to cross it. And probably one of the most interesting things that I saw in that trial, I've never seen before or since. So we had a projector set up by the jury box that this government and the defense used. It was an opaque projector, electronic projector, which in '94 was pretty key technology. And Doug, when you'd use it, you'd walk over there and you put your photographs on it. Doug would walk over to the projector, and we'd see him kind of be distracted a little bit. He'd walk back kind of quickly and start watching it. And when he would walk over there was one of the jurors that would start talking to him. And we asked him, after we figured it out, we asked him what's going on. He said, she's giving me questions to ask. And what had happened was that the jurors had just become so enamored with him, so enthralled with what he was doing, they wanted to be part of the team. They wanted to help him. And it was just, it was really interesting to watch. And then after the trial, we became friends. He would invite me to stay with him at his house. He was married to Lisa at that time, and I'd go down and spend the weekend with him, or if she was gone, sometimes he'd call me, and I'd go down there. And at that time, he had a Labrador Retriever, and so did I. And they'd swim in the canal he lived on, and then he didn't care if they were wet. They could come in the house, jump up on the couch. That was a playland for dogs. And probably the last time I was there was when he was representing the woman that was accused of shooting Selena. And we had cooked dinner, had a nice meal, drank some champagne, which he always drank. And I was heading upstairs to go to bed, and he said, "Oh, by the way, I just wanted to let you know I got a death threat last night and got one today, so if you hear gunshots, you probably ought to get under the bed."
Now, the person you represented on the Branch Davidian was found not guilty, right?
Right, found not guilty. Walked out of the courtroom with him over to the Fairmont Hotel, and had been in Branch Davidians for 20-something years, and I bought him his first alcoholic drink. He decided to have a daiquiri after he was found not guilty.
Tell us about the Bandito case that you tried, the writ habeas corpus, a couple of years ago.
Yeah, that was a real satisfying case because what we were able to do was my client, who was a Bandito member, had been convicted of a murder that he had done, and he was convicted because he was a Bandito. The guy who actually committed the murder had testified in another trial that guy had committed the murder and not my client, and the state basically cross-examined him and argued that he was lying, even though the evidence pointed to him having committed the murder. So we got involved in the case. You got me involved in the case. We did a lot of investigation. Investigators spent as much time on the case as I did or more. Found witnesses that was 27 years old at the time the murder happened 27 years ago. We found witnesses that hadn't been called by the state. One witness in particular we knew drank pretty heavily. He was a fisherman. So we waited for him on the dock about noon to come in because they told us by 1 he'd be drunk. So we interviewed him and discovered that he had told the state that the other guy had done the murder, and the state had not put him on and did not disclose that to the previous lawyer. And we found another witness who had done the same thing. And in the middle of the writ hearing, it turns out that he had testified to the grand jury basically about something that was exculpatory to my client, and they indicted him for perjury for saying that. And that really upset the judge. And make a long story short, Doug Tinker actually testified in that hearing and testified that the prosecutor was a liar, and everybody knew he was a liar, the one that withheld the evidence. And the judge issued a pretty scathing set of findings of fact and conclusions of law, and our client was exonerated.
Let me ask you, Gerry, what advice would you give a young attorney now that wants to go into criminal defense work?
Well, get into TCLA first of all, and there's a lot of other things I could talk about that benefits TCLA, but it's the best thing you could do. And secondly, and getting into TCLA helps this, find some good lawyers, follow them around, talk to them, make friends with them, watch what they do, watch how they do it, listen to their stories, talk about your cases with them, and just learn how to be a lawyer. And the best way you can do that, like I said, is to watch people that are good at it, to gain some reputation for being good, and see how they do it. There's just not a better way to do that than to get involved with an organization like TCLA.